Hello and welcome to the Better Leaders Show, episode 42. Today I'm talking to Egbert Mulder. Welcome, Egbert.
Welcome, Anno, and thank you for inviting me.
And Egbert, I'm Dutch, so for me it's a very easy name to pronounce. But if you're not from the Netherlands, you don't know how the works. How do you do that with internet? Because you work with international clients, how do you do that with your name?
Well, I just say Egbert, and everyone understands that. Some English-speaking participants call me Egg but no bacon, because I'm a vegetarian as well. And that's an old joke that they use in the UK. So then Egbert, it's not a difficult name, Anno.
No, I agree. So I invited you because we spoke earlier on the phone about the work that you do. We talked about IDGs and development goals. And what I particularly want to talk about is the workshop that you do. And I know it's difficult to explain if you don't experience it. I haven't experienced it yet, so I know it's going to be difficult. But as I've learned from you, it is a very interesting workshop, and I would like to talk about this a bit. So, and especially if you internationally and you know about space, astronauts, this is going to be an interesting story. And also what the effect is of people who return to Earth and how we can use that effect for leaders to look at the future differently. So can you please describe what the workshop with the VR element is and how it works?
Yeah, thank you, Anno. So my the whole experience, the whole workshop started a couple of years ago when we were giving workshops and masterclasses for leaders, and we tried to convince them and to inspire them to redesign their thinking and redesign their organization into a sustainable and a social enterprise. And it was during that period, probably 4 or 5 years ago, that I found out about the so-called overview effect. And in designing this whole technique, I spoke with a man from the USA called Frank White, and he wrote this book, The Overview Effect, in 1987. And when I had an interview with him, one of many I had with designing this workshop, I asked him, how can we use this overview effect for leadership? And that's how it all started. But first, let me explain what the overview effect is. And so what is this phenomenon and why does it have such a huge impact on astronauts? Well, Frank White told me that when astronauts are in space and they look at the Earth from space, and especially the early astronauts, the Apollo astronauts, who have been away from the Earth a very long distance. So at the moon, it's 400,000 kilometers watching the Earth. So the Earth is very small. And what they experience is that many say that in this way we came for the moon, but we discovered the Earth. And the first time that happened was in Christmas Eve, 1968, with the crew of Apollo 8, who first made a trip to the backside, the dark side of the moon. And this was live broadcasted all around the world. And of course, it was very exciting because no one had ever been on the far side or the backside of the moon. Actually, no one had ever been to the moon. So it was very exciting, and the whole world was watching, not only in the USA, but also in the Netherlands. And everyone was very excited. What would happen? Would they come back after the moon, etc.? And so the contact with the crew was distorted for half an hour or something when they were on the backside of the moon. And then everyone was waiting, could Apollo 8 get in contact again with Houston? And it took a little bit longer than expected, but then they made contact again, and then they turned the camera onto the Earth. And this moment is called Earthrise. So not sunrise, but Earthrise. seeing the Earth appearing on the horizon of the moon. And not many people realized it at that moment, but in fact, it was a very epic moment in the history of mankind, because we saw the Earth from the moon. And that is the basis of what we call the overview effect. We realize that the Earth is both really beautiful, the only place where we can live. Some astronauts called it the Garden of Eden. But astronauts also realize that it's very fragile. They see this very thin layer of breathable atmosphere around the Earth, and it's just, let's say, 10 kilometers high, not even that, 8 kilometers maybe, where we can breathe and live. And what astronauts experience, how fragile the Earth is. So not only beautiful, our only place where we can live, but it's also very, very fragile. And this change in perspective, which is both cognitive, intellectual, knowing, but also feeling, this change in perspective is what we call planetary awareness. So it's the awareness that our planet is very beautiful. It's a lovely home, but it's also very fragile, and it's the only thing we have. And if you are in space as an astronaut, you realize that the distance between a deadly atmosphere outside of the capsule with minus 273 degrees, with a deadly radiation and no air pressure, no oxygen. And then you look at the Earth, and that's livable, and there's water, and there's oxygen, and there are plants, etc. And the further away you are from the Earth, the more you realize it's the only thing we have, because the whole universe is dead, and we can't live there. So in this, so I asked Frank White, how can we use that? Because it's such a powerful phenomenon, and probably 70 to 80% of astronauts who return to Earth become eco-activists. We always say, not because they read a book about sustainability. They just saw the Earth, and this Earth gazing, as it is called. That's the whole phenomenon. So I asked him, how can we use that in training leaders, in developing new leadership skills? And then he told me that there was a group of people, psychologists and technical people working in the UK on building this virtual reality program, not for sustainability, but actually for mental health issues. And I contacted them, and together with now my colleagues, Anahita Nezami and Charles Perring, we built this program, and we tuned it especially for developing new skills for sustainable leaders. And so what we did is we had pictures from the NASA, photos, and we put them, so to say, into gaming software. And we made a virtual space with 4 elements. So the background is the Milky Way, so to say, the universe. And then there's the moon, then there's the Earth, of course, and there's the sun. And there are also other elements like gravity and sun rays, etc. But those are the main 4 elements. And actually, what we did is we made a virtual camera making a space journey through this virtual void, so to say, through this virtual space. So the journey actually begins the same as Apollo 8 on the backside of the moon. Then you witness Earthrise, and then you travel to the Earth, and Earth, Gaia, starts talking to you. And there's a special soundscape with special sounds, binaural beats, heartbeats, meditation sounds, etc. And the aim of the virtual reality experience is that you develop what we call a compassionate relation with Earth. And that we understand Earth, we develop a new connection with Earth, not in a intellectual way, but in an emotional way. So we both use heart knowledge and head knowledge, so our heart and our brain, to give people a new awareness. And what we always say, everything starts with awareness. So if we talk about sustainability, if we talk about development goals, you can only do that if you have a certain awareness, because action comes from awareness. And knowing something, feeling something also means that you want something. So if you feel connected on a deeper, let's say, emotional level with the Earth, you want to protect the Earth. And one of our first participants was a lady called Kate Raworth, and she developed a new theory about what she called the donut economy. And she said it very well in one of the first sessions we did. She said, you can only understand a system if you are out of the system. So we can only understand Earth if we are not at Earth. So we only understand Earth if we are away from Earth. And so if we are on Earth and we look at the sky and we think about the atmosphere, we might think that the atmosphere is huge, and it doesn't matter if we pollute the atmosphere because it's so huge and there's enough of it. And what does it matter if we burn coal or gas or etc. or oil? But once you're in space and you look at this very thin layer of breathable atmosphere, you realize it's very thin. It's extremely, it's thinner than the shell of an egg, so to say. It's less than 0.1% of the circle of the Earth itself. And outside it's deadly. So once you realize and feel how fragile it is, you want to protect it. Yeah.
I'm curious about the question. I have a couple of questions, but the question that is now on my mind is, so you have these astronauts who I believe most of them are trained fighters, pilots, right? Pilots, so they were trained as a pilot, but usually also in the army, right? So in the Air Force.
Yeah.
So they were fighter pilots. And so they very much were trained to, I would say attack maybe, but for sure not to protect. Well, they protect maybe the country, but they didn't protect the Earth. Let's put it that way. So they were trained to be effective, to be in control, and then they go out to space in a long training program. They go out to space, and then they return and they become eco-activists.
Yeah,
I find that a really strange kind of transformation. I think that's the great word, a transformation. And because I've been talking about this with a couple of people on the podcast I had before, how can you make more people aware of what's going on? For example, when the president of the UN was going to the melting ice caps, he thought differently about this topic. When a friend of mine, who's now the leader of the Zero Waste Netherlands, I'm not sure, a group, I would say, it's not company, organization. She was at a beach in Costa Rica where she witnessed the pollution on the beaches. And she said, okay, I've been already aware of what's going on, but now I can see the world needs more impact of me. They need more input of me to really make it happen, not just from me, but from more people. And I can understand now that this immersion in this world that you are creating, in this VR world that you're creating, this is a great way of transporting people to this, different way of looking at things, experiencing it really, without going there, without that, everybody needs to go to this place to see, oh yeah, it's really that bad. So we don't have to go in outer space to be in a rocket, but we can experience it here. That was one thing that I thought of. This is just a great way to make people. It's not a question. It's a great way to help people to experience this, and so that they can see, oh yes, I really need to do something about this.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is. And so the first thing you said is how can it be that people who are trained to be a pilot or a fighter pilot or military people or test pilots, I mean, the first astronauts, they were all really macho people. There's a lot written about them, the right stuff. They were called the right stuff. They had the right stuff. And they were not totally into environmental things or spiritual things, but it happened to all of them. It happened to all of them. All of them came back, and many of them didn't know what happened. And they came back as a different person. And their wives didn't recognize them anymore, and they started doing completely different things, from painting to let's say environmental things. And so that was actually the start of this research that Frank White did, because the International Association of Astronauts in the 80s wanted to find out what happened with these astronauts, and why did they transform into completely different, let's say, personalities with different values and different ethics and different beliefs only by being in space. What happened with them? And the interesting thing is, it is indeed the experience. And this experience is so powerful. So many people say this is what the same as what Kate Raworth said. This is what all leaders should experience. And of course, we can't put people on a rocket. I mean, space travel is extremely polluting, extremely carbon rich, so to say. So we simply can't do it, and you don't want to do it. It's also, of course, very expensive. And of course, there are three people, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson, who set up their own company saying we want to promote space travel because people need to experience this overview effect. And it's so, but there's a very good alternative, and that's virtual reality. And virtual reality is becoming more and more impactful. We are always building new software, making it more impactful, more realistic, sharper and better images, etc. So it's a very interesting experience. We did now more than 200 workshops with thousands of people, and every time after we did the virtual reality, I asked people, so how long do you think the experience lasted? And this week again, yesterday, people said, well, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then I say, no, it was more than half an hour. Just look at your watch. So people simply forget time. It's very immersive. They feel that they are in space. And just being in space for half an hour is apparently enough for people to change their values and their attitudes. And then, of course, this is a momentarily change in awareness. So it's not permanent, but it's a change in perspective that then we use in the rest of our workshop. So actually, we make people more sensitive for information. That's the other part of the workshop. What is happening with life on Earth, and why is this happening? So this is about the biosphere, the atmosphere, and the oceans. In the past, what happened the last 50 years? Where are we now? And what is waiting for us in the future if we continue to have an economy that we have at the moment? If we don't change drastically our patterns in fossil consumption and the killing of biodiversity. And then it scares people because it is frightening. And so it's not about saving the planet, it's about saving humanity. And if we talk about extinct species, and 10,000 species a year get extinct, and the one species that should be on the red list as well is Homo sapiens. That's ourselves. So actually we use this virtual reality to make people more open, more sensitive on what is happening with the planet. And then the last part of the workshop is, so if we know what is happening, we want to find out why is it happening. So what are, let's say, the psychological, the technical, the financial, the economical issues that have caused this problem? Then we also have clues to work on that problem. And there's a lot of research done the last 10 years. It's called eco-psychology. How can we change people awareness, intentions, so that they become, they feel responsible, they feel engaged to do something. So one of the things that we want to achieve is that people feel engagement, feel responsible for what they do now, but also what the impact is for what they do, what their company is doing for the future, for future generation, but also for people who live somewhere else in the world. Because we are historically and still now the polluters. The northern half, USA, Europe and China, are the largest emitters in the world, and the rest of the world is suffering. And lately, the last 2-3 months, we had a lot of rain in the Netherlands. Actually, we never had as much rain since we start measuring the rain 100 years ago. Most people don't understand why it is raining so heavily. It is because oceans are heating up, extremely heating up. But that's probably one of the few problems that we experience in Europe. But the rest of the world is burning, is cooking. And Asia, India, Africa, of course, is really suffering now already with the heat. And although we, on average, only the temperature only was raised by 1.1 or 1.2 degrees, differing from pre-industrial times. In some parts of the world, it is already 3 to 4 degrees warmer, with much more extreme temperatures. So if we want to change people, the first thing we want is that they feel engaged and that they feel responsible, that they know what is going on, and that they have this, what we call, as I said, this compassionate relation with the planet. Mm-hmm. One of the other things, and that's also interesting, if you talk about pilots, pilots are the essence of being a military person is defending your country. So there are barriers, and you have your country and there are other countries, etc. One of the interesting things that astronauts experience when they are in space is there are no boundaries. And one of the astronauts said, the first day I only looked at my own country, and the second day I looked at my continent, and after 3 or 4 days I only saw one Earth. And then you realize we are all on the same planet. And from space, you don't see any boundaries. There are no borders. What you do see is pollution. And you see bushfires. And you see that everyone is suffering from what is happening. Mm-hmm. So that's another aspect of what astronauts experience, is that we are all, as Wubbo Ockels, the famous Dutch astronaut said, we are all astronauts on spaceship Earth. We are all in this together. And so that's another thing, that you feel connected. Not only connected to other people, to other countries, but also you feel connected to the planet as a whole, and you feel connected, and that's an interesting aspect, you feel connected to the universe. And that's what's called non-dualism in Hinduism. So that's another interesting aspect, and that's what you could call that a religious experience or a spiritual
Spiritual.
experience. And the interesting thing is that some people, not all, but some, I would say at least 10 to 20% of all participants, also with the virtual reality experience this feeling of being connected to, let's say, the universe, or to the bigger whole. And that's also what astronauts experience. And of course, if you're a jet pilot fighter and you have this experience for the first time, it might it might puzzle you, so to say.
Yeah. So you started this idea and company a couple of years ago, and you have this BHAG, which is to help 1 million leaders before 2030. And you called your name the Circular Leadership. Why did you choose leadership?
Well, there are two things. So it's circular and it's leadership. Let me first talk about leadership. The people who make decisions, the decision makers are leaders, but we are all leaders. You are a leader. If you spend money from your household for your family, for your football club, we are all leaders. And I think that leadership, so we are not talking about leaders, we are talking about leadership. And leadership is important because we all need leaders, we all need leadership. And if we realize what is going on on Earth, we talk about political leaders, we talk about leaders from education, universities, high schools. We talk about leaders, of course, from companies, and we believe that companies have a very strong influence of what's going on, and they can be a role model. So what we talk is what kind of leaders do we need, to put it simply, to keep our planet habitable, so that humankind can survive on this planet. Because if we continue to have leaders, leaders that we have now and leaders that we have in the past, they take the wrong decisions. They do the wrong things. They invest in wrong, let's say, dangerous technologies and dangerous laws, and they don't protect life on Earth as they should be. So that's where the inner development goals come into sight, so to say. And the model that we have developed is also a circular model. So why do we talk about circular? First of all, we want to promote the circular economy, meaning that we reduce and reuse all materials, because we are living on a finite world, not an infinite world. We are living on a finite world, and our resources are finite. And that was already said, of course, 50 years ago by the Club of Rome, who already said in 1972 that we don't have infinite resources. There's one infinite resource we have, and that's solar energy. That's the sun, because that will be there for billions of years. But the rest, what we have on our planet, is limited. So we need to circulate everything that we use, and everything that we take out of the soil. The other thing with circular is that let's say the development of leadership is also a circle. So our circle starts with awareness, with insights, with feeling and knowing. And in fact, our workshop is about this awareness. So you feel connected, you feel compassion for the planet, but also you know what is going on. If you have developed this awareness, then the second phase is mission. Because if you know something and you feel something, you want something. And that's let's say the translation of your purpose. If you feel responsible for the planet, if you feel compassionate about the planet and you know what's going on, you want to do something. And that's your personal mission or your organizational mission or your purpose or the targets that you want to aim for. And it starts with awareness, and then comes your personal mission, the translation of your awareness. And then come competences, and that's the inner development goals. So what kind of competences, skills do leaders need that they don't have now, but they do need in to, let's say, to keep our planet habitable? And we talk about competences as courage. Courage to do something that doesn't make you popular. Courage to do something that might be dangerous because it has never done before. But courage that you need to show, even if you're fearful, you need to act, and you need to do something that you know is necessary. Not because it's nice, not because it makes you popular, but you know it is necessary. Another competence, another skill that we think people need is that they have optimism or hope. Not in the way that you think everything will be all right, but even with facing a future that is not, let's say, ideal, a future where things will happen as they are already happening now, which are threatening to people. Sea level rise, heat waves, lack of drinking water, etc. It might make us afraid. It will make us afraid. It would be strange if it wouldn't touch it, if it wouldn't create negative feelings, negative emotions. Of course, it creates negative emotions. If you just realize that this could be true in the future, of course, it gives negative emotion. But negative emotions also create apathy, or thinking, after me the deluge, what does it matter? There's nothing I can do, etc. So we need positive energy, we need active hope, we need optimism to do what we need to have to do. Although we do not know what the results will be, we still have to act and do everything to make it less worse, so to say. Because that's another aspect that we have to face as well. Science tells us that we have passed already a couple of major tipping points. And whether there are 4 or 5 or 6 tipping points, they all influence each other. But probably we have passed a couple of important tipping points already.
Yeah.
Meaning that whatever we do, we will not sustain. And that's also the reason why we don't use the word sustainable economy, because we can't sustain what we have. It will change anyway. But even if it gets worse, we still have to act, and we have to do everything to keep the planet not getting warmer than 1.5 degrees, as was promised, as was agreed in the Paris Agreement.
Yeah.
Which will be very, very hard. Also, if we look at the results of the COP28 this week in Dubai, a good step, but not enough.
No.
Totally not enough. So, but we need to be positive, and we have to work together. We have to work together with all initiatives and with everyone involved all around the world to keep the warming of the planet as low as possible. Okay. So that's another thing. We need to be able to cooperate with other people. We have to be able to inspire people. And also we have to be able to inspire and energize people who are not yet inspired or energized. And last week, the Central Bureau for Statistics in the Netherlands presented the last figures on climate change, and they said 70% of the Dutch population is worried about climate change, 75%. And this 75% also knows what's going on, but they don't act that way. They still fly, they still eat meat, they don't vote for political parties who do something about climate change. So there's a big difference between what people think and what they do. And what we try to do is also to work out, let's say, ways of inspiring and involving people that might be worried but don't act accordingly.
Okay, Egbert, for your workshops, because this is an international audience listening to the Better Leaders Show, and where do you give your workshops?
Well, we started in the Netherlands 2 years ago, October 2021. Then we went to Hungary, we went to UK, in London, in Cambridge, in Oxford, we went to Costa Rica, we went to Belgium. This year we did quite a lot of trainings in Costa Rica. We did workshops there. We trained people also to get a license, a certificate for us to use our knowledge, our hardware, our software to do trainings in Central America, Costa Rica, and the Caribbean. And we want to spread our knowledge. We want to engage as many people as possible and find partners all around the world who are enthusiastic to work with our experience, with our work, and do the same thing that we do in different countries all around the world. Because, as you said, Erno, our aim, our purpose is to reach out to 1 million leaders before 2030. Well, why 2030? Because this is the decade of action. We really have to act now in this decade. And 1 million, well, we think that 1 million might be just enough to reach another tipping point. We call that a social tipping point. And hopefully when we have 1 million people witnessing, experiencing this virtual reality workshop, they influence not only themselves, they not only change themselves, change their own organization, but also people and organization in their circle of influence. So that might be their employees, it might be their customers, their suppliers, etc. And then when you have 1 million people, let's say, on the right move, we think we have done everything that we can do to make impact and to be of help for getting the world habitable, keeping the world habitable.
So if people want to connect with you to learn more about this workshop, to see if they can organize or get this workshop to their location, circularleadership.eu, or you can scan the code that is on the screen right now, that you can go directly to the website. You can connect with Egbert Mulder on LinkedIn or get to him through the website. I think that is an important step to take if you want to, become a better leader and care about the future of our planet. And I think if you really want to have this immersive feeling about, what you said, the overview effect, and learn and to see how delicate, how fragile our atmosphere is, and how little space there is for pollution and wasting resources. I think it is a wonderful workshop, and I think people should connect with you to get the workshop, to learn more about the workshop, and to see how you can bring them the workshop to their location.
Yes, of course, Enno. And if there are people from other countries who are interested in licensing this material, then please contact with me, and we'll see what we can do for you to also use this very powerful, effective tool. What we call it a tool in developing new leadership skills and competences.
Well, thank you for that. I'm gonna say by Monday, this episode will be on the betterleaders.me website. There's also the LinkedIn group that you can join to meet other people who want to be better leaders or who are better leaders and help each other to become better leaders. Thank you for joining us today. And as always, we'd love to see you next Friday at 9 a.m. Central or 4 p.m. Central European time. So thank you Egbert, for sharing this experience in the best possible way that we can do today without having the virtual reality experience live. But we can do that in the next session, hopefully. Thank you, Egbert.
Good. You're welcome. Thank you, Anna, for the opportunity to talk about this. Thank you.